My name is Hannah. I live in a small town in northern Oregon, in a house that backs up to a dense stretch of woods. No sidewalks, no streetlights, just thick trees and a single gravel road that leads up to my driveway. I've lived here for 3 years now. I like the quiet. I like the way the fog rolls in early in the morning and how the forest smells after it rains. It's peaceful. Or at least, it was. Until last fall. It started with a phone call from my neighbor, Julie. She lives about a quarter mile down the road and is usually pretty reserved. But that night, she sounded shaken. "Did you see someone out by your shed earlier?" I blinked, confused. "No. I've been inside all evening." "Why?" She hesitated. "I thought I saw someone standing back there, just watching your house." That alone would have been enough to raise my heart rate, but then she added, "They were tall, wearing something dark. When I looked again, they were gone." I went to the back window and checked. Nothing. Just the trees. The shed sat quiet at the edge of the yard, its door locked and untouched. I told myself she was mistaken, that it was just the shadows playing tricks. But deep down, I knew something was off, and that was just the first night. After that call from Julie, I barely slept. I kept checking the windows every half hour, waiting for something, anything, to move out by the trees. But there was nothing, just the shadows, the empty shed, the thick blackness beyond the yard. By dawn, I convinced myself she'd probably just seen a deer, or maybe caught a glimpse of her own reflection. But the next evening, something felt off. I went out back to feed my cat around 7 p.m., just before it got completely dark. That's when I noticed the shed door was slightly open. It's an old wooden door that sticks unless you yank it. I always make sure to latch it shut. Always. I hesitated, then slowly walked over. Wet leaves crunched beneath my boots as I stepped into the yard. The porch light behind me cast a pale circle across the grass, but the shed itself was mostly cloaked in shadow. I pulled the door open the rest of the way. It creaked. The shed was empty. At least I thought it was, until I noticed something on the floor near the back wall. Footprints, big ones, soaked into the plywood like someone had come in from the rain and tracked mud across the floor. They weren't mine. Too large, heavy, and they didn't lead out. They stopped at the back wall. I slammed the door shut, bolted it, and rushed inside, locking both the back and front doors. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked the shed again in daylight. The prints were still there, drying now, and something else had changed too. A small black object sat on the workbench. A button. Just a single black button. Too big for a shirt, too small for a coat. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I didn't want to sound paranoid. Maybe it had just fallen out of an old sewing box. Maybe it had always been there. But later that night, just as I was locking up again, I heard 3 slow taps on my back window. And when I turned to look, heart thudding in my chest, I saw it. A shape, a tall figure just outside the glass, not moving, not pressing against it, just standing there, half hidden in the dark, watching. I stood frozen, staring at the silhouette outside my window. He wasn't moving, he wasn't doing anything, just watching. I backed away slowly and grabbed my phone from the kitchen counter, hands trembling, heart hammering. I dialed 911. Dead. No service. I checked the signal bar. Nothing. Not even one. The house sat in a dead zone sometimes during storms, but tonight the skies were clear. There was no reason I should have lost service, unless something was blocking it. I turned off all the lights inside, hoping to see out more clearly, but by the time I looked again, he was gone. I stood there, paralyzed, staring into the dark backyard for what felt like an hour. Nothing moved, no sound, just the wind rustling the leaves. Then something dawned on me. I had security cameras, cheap ones, but enough to record movement. I grabbed my laptop, pulled up the feed from the last 10 minutes. The motion trigger had activated at 8:47 p.m. I pressed play. There he was. A man, tall, wearing dark clothes, walking along the side of my house, just out of view from the main road. He didn't approach the windows or doors. He walked right past them and disappeared behind the shed. That was it. The feed ended. Nothing showed him walking away, which meant, if the timestamp was right, he was still back there. I made a choice I still don't understand. I grabbed the flashlight, pulled on my boots, stepped out onto the porch. I couldn't take it anymore. The feeling of being stalked in my own home, the waiting, the guessing. The backyard was silent, cold. The beam of my flashlight flicked over the trees, the lawn, the shed. The door was closed. I approached slowly, flashlight trembling in my grip. "Hello?" I called out. I already called the cops. They're on their way. No response. I reached the shed, took a deep breath, reached out, and flung the door open. Nothing. Just tools, boxes, old lawn chairs. And then I saw it, carved into the inside wall, fresh and deep. I was never trying to get in. I stepped back, eyes wide, breathing quick, and that's when I heard it. The front door of my house opening. I froze. The shed was behind me, the woods beyond that. The sound of the front door creaking open echoed faintly through the yard. I hadn't left it unlocked. I know I hadn't. My heart was racing so fast it hurt. I turned off the flashlight, crouched down in the shadow of the shed, and listened. No footsteps, no talking. Just that horrible, heavy silence. Then I heard the door shut. Whoever was inside had just closed themselves in. I stayed hidden for what felt like an eternity. I wanted to run, scream, do anything. But every instinct told me not to move, to wait. Eventually, I made a decision. I didn't go back to the house. I ran. I cut through the trees, through the brush, barefoot and bleeding by the time I made it to Julie's place. She called the police. They arrived 20 minutes later. By the time they searched my house, no one was there. No forced entry. Nothing stolen. The only thing they found was the front door unlocked and the back door wide open. They checked the shed too, and inside, they found more carvings. Dates. Dozens of them. Going back over a year. And next to each one, a tiny mark. Some kind of symbol? I didn't understand what it meant until I saw the last one. It had that night's date, freshly scratched, and next to it 2 words, "Came out." My name is Devin, and this happened just last winter. I had just moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor of a gated complex in Glendale, Arizona. Nothing fancy, but it was quiet, clean, and, most importantly, safe. Or so I thought. I work night shifts at a hotel, so my sleep schedule is all over the place. On my days off, I'm usually awake late, watching TV or gaming with friends online. That night, I was on the couch in the living room, lights off, just the TV flickering and the low hum of the heater running. It was raining, which is rare for Arizona. Not a storm, just a light drizzle tapping softly against the balcony door. That's when I heard it. A knock, not on the front door, on the sliding glass door that led to my balcony. It was soft, slow. 3 short taps. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. My apartment is on the 2nd floor. The only way onto that balcony is through the living room, from inside. There's no ladder, no fire escape, no stairs on the back of the building, just a 10-foot drop to the ground. And someone was outside, knocking. I muted the TV and just sat there, staring at the sliding glass door. The blinds were closed, but they're the cheap vertical kind that sway slightly with the breeze, and one of them was turned just enough for me to see a shadow behind it. Someone was definitely there. Not moving, just standing still on my balcony. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My phone was on the coffee table, just out of reach unless I leaned forward. I stayed frozen for a few more seconds, heart pounding, trying to listen for footsteps, breathing, anything. Nothing. Then another knock. Tap, tap, tap. Same rhythm. Software patient. I reached for my phone and quietly turned on the camera app instead of calling anyone. I slid the phone slowly between the blinds and angled it outward. My hand was shaking. I pulled it back and looked at the screen. There was nothing there. The balcony was empty, but I'd heard it. Twice. 3 soft knocks, and I saw the shadow. I pulled the blinds apart and stepped closer. Still nothing. Just wet concrete, my empty patio chair, and the city lights reflecting off the slick glass. I slid the door open a crack and leaned out, looking up and down the complex. Deserted. The unit next to me was vacant. Lights off. Nobody home. Below, the walkway was empty. I stepped back inside and locked the door again, double-checked it. Maybe it had been a bird. Maybe wind. Maybe my imagination. That's what I told myself, until I sat back down and noticed something on the glass. A handprint. Faint. Smudged. Too big to be mine, and too high. It was pressed against the top right corner of the sliding door. Whoever made it wasn't just standing on the balcony. They were taller than the door itself. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up, lights on, blinds shut tight, staring at the balcony door. I even placed a chair against it. Not that it would stop anyone, but it made me feel better. The next morning, I went downstairs and asked the property manager, Jerry, if any maintenance workers had been around. Not at 3 a.m., he said with a confused smile. Why? I told him someone had knocked on my balcony door. His smile faded. You're on the 2nd floor, right? I nodded. He hesitated, then looked around like he didn't want anyone else hearing. You're not the first person to say that. He explained that about 8 months ago, a woman in the unit 2 doors down had called the police, said someone had knocked on her sliding door at night. Same thing. 3 taps, no one there, no signs of forced entry. She'd moved out less than a week later. I asked if there were cameras facing my side of the building. He shook his head. Only in the front parking lot. I went back upstairs uneasy. That night, I stayed awake again. This time with the lights off, watching the balcony through a crack in the blinds, phone in hand, camera ready. Nothing. Until 2:44 a.m. on the dot. Another knock, tap, tap, tap. I didn't move this time. Just raised my phone and recorded a short clip through the gap. I reviewed the footage. No one was there. But the audio? You could clearly hear it. 3 soft knocks, right where the glass meets the frame. I looked up from the phone and froze. There was a face, right behind the blinds, pressed against the glass, mouth wide open, eyes wide. And then, gone. I yanked the blinds open. Empty. The balcony was still. Rain tapping gently. I opened the door and stepped out, against every instinct in my body. And there, scratched faintly into the wet metal railing, were the words, "Let me knock again." I backed into my apartment, locked the door again, and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning, I scrubbed the handprint off the glass, wiped down the railing. I wanted it all gone, like maybe cleaning it would make it stop. But the knocking came again the next night. 2:44 a.m. Always 3 taps, always on the glass, never a person in sight. After a week, I tried recording audio overnight. The app picked it up every time, exact timestamp, same rhythm, same location. I even emailed the clips to myself, thinking maybe I could show someone. The police, the complex, anyone. But every time I played the file on a different device, the knocking was gone. The file would still be there. The waveform showed the sound. But when you played it, silence. And that wasn't even the worst part. One night, I was so exhausted I finally passed out early. I woke up at 2:47 a.m. in a panic, sat up, ran to the door, checked the glass, and saw it. For the first time, something had been left behind. Pressed into the condensation on the outside of the glass was a word, long, tall letters made with a finger. One word. Soon. I moved out 2 days later. Didn't wait for the lease to end. Didn't give notice. I don't care what I lost in the deposit. I never went back. Sometimes I still hear tapping at night. Not always at 2:44. Not always on glass, but always in threes. And when I do, I don't answer. Because now I understand. The knocking isn't just someone trying to get your attention. It's a test. And once you open the door, you've let it in. My name is Caleb. I live on a small farm in rural Pennsylvania, a few miles outside a town most people have never heard of. My family's owned this land for generations. Rolling fields, a broken-down barn, a lot of overgrowth, and a long, winding driveway that keeps us isolated from the main road. It's peaceful out here. Nothing but crickets at night, and the occasional coyote in the distance. But something happened a few years back, and I still don't have an explanation. It started with a light. One night in late October, I was locking up the chicken coop when I noticed something strange in the eastern field. The one we let go wild, full of tall grass and dead corn stalks. I saw a faint glow, like someone had a flashlight pointed straight down into the dirt. I stood there watching for a minute, confused. No one should have been out there. We don't have neighbors close enough to wander through our property, and there's no reason to be in that field at all. Then the light vanished, just blinked out like someone hit a switch. I waited a while, didn't see anything else, and went inside. The next night, same thing. A light in the field, then gone. And on the third night, it wasn't just a light. It was a man, standing in the middle of the field, perfectly still, facing my house. I stood on the porch that third night, staring out across the field. The man was about 200 yards out, not moving, not holding a flashlight this time. Just standing, half silhouetted by the moonlight, surrounded by waist-high grass and swaying corn stalks. I thought maybe it was a hunter or a trespasser who got turned around. I shouted, "Hey, you're on private property!" No response. He didn't move, didn't even flinch. I grabbed my rifle just in case and walked out into the yard, boots crunching across dry leaves and gravel. The second I stepped off the porch, I heard a sound behind me. A single knock on the back door. I spun around. No one was there. I checked inside the house, locked, ran back outside. The man in the field was gone. Just gone. I stood there for a long time, flashlight sweeping across rows of overgrowth and dark patches of dirt. I even walked halfway into the field, but there were no footprints, no broken stalks, no sign that anyone had been there. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I went out at first light to check the field again. I brought my dog with me. He's a good tracker, usually barks at strangers. But that morning, he wouldn't go near the field. He just stood at the edge and whined, ears low, tail between his legs. That's when I noticed something near the center of the field. A circle, about 8 feet across, where the grass was flattened completely, like something had stood there for a long time, or had been waiting. That night, I set up a trail cam. I positioned it facing the field, with a clear line of sight to the flattened area. Checked it 3 times before bed. Still recording. No motion. Nothing happened. Until 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the sound of knocking. Not on the back door this time, on the window above my bed. second story. I shot up, heart racing, and yanked back the curtain. No one was there, just the empty yard, and the faint red light of the trail cam, blinking slowly in the distance. Recording. Still aimed at the field. At first light, I went out to retrieve the trail cam. The SD card was still inside. I brought it in, loaded it up on my laptop, and skipped through the footage. Hours of empty field. Nothing moving, not even wind. Then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., the video glitched, just for a second. Then the camera steadied, and someone was standing in the field. Only, they hadn't walked into frame. There was no movement at all. One frame, empty. Next frame, he was there. Same man I'd seen before. Tall, still. Wearing something dark and indistinct. The image was blurry, but his head was tilted up, not looking at the house, looking directly at the camera. I paused it and zoomed in. His eyes. They were completely black. No light reflection. No whites. Just dark, empty pits. Frame by frame, I moved forward. For the next 10 seconds, he didn't move at all. Then, in one single frame, he was closer. Like he jumped 30 feet forward instantly. Then again. Closer. Now at the edge of the camera's field of view. And then, the frame after that. Just static. When the image returned, the field was empty again. No man. But the camera timestamp continued. And at 3:14 a.m., a sound cut into the audio feed. Knocking. Software rhythmic. Not from the field. From inside the house. The knocking on the audio file wasn't from outside. I recognized it. It matched the exact sound of the hallway floorboard just outside my bedroom. The one that creaks when you step on it. The one you can't avoid if you're walking past my door. I paused the video. Tried to tell myself it was some kind of glitch. Maybe interference. Maybe the audio picked up something else entirely. But I couldn't shake the feeling. That whole day, I moved through the house like I was walking through someone else's home. Like something had shifted. Some boundary that had been keeping me safe was gone. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the living room with the lights off, shotgun across my lap, staring out at the field through the front window. 3 a.m. Nothing. 3:05. Still nothing. Then, at 3:12 a.m., my porch light turned on. Motion detected. I stood up slowly, walked to the front door, and listened. No knocking. Just breathing. Right on the other side of the door. I raised the shotgun, heart slamming in my chest, and threw the door open. No one. Empty porch, still air, except there was something sitting at the edge of the top step. Something small. I stepped forward and looked down. It was a photo, a Polaroid. Old, warped by rain. And in it was me, sitting on the porch that night, holding the shotgun. Except I hadn't taken any photos. I didn't even own a Polaroid camera. And in the photo, standing in the field behind me, was him. Closer than ever. The grass around his feet bent outward in a perfect circle. Just like the one I'd found. Just like the one he always stood in. I dropped the photo and ran back inside. That was 3 years ago. I never saw him again. I burned the photo, sold the house, moved 3 states away. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, for no reason at all, I check the window. And every now and then, there's a faint circle in the grass, just waiting.